When leading people, strong communication skills is needed. At the end of the day, it's important to communicate the plan of attack, communicate your vision, communicate changes that are going to take place, give your team ample time and notice, ask if they have the objections. You still might move forward anyway, but ultimately getting their feedback and hearing them out, that is the approach that you need to take. So I took a little bit of a humble pie. When I look back at that experience, I still cringe. Now, if there's any changes in place, if the director were moving that directive, that's fine. We might move in that directive, but I'm going to provide ample communication. I'm going to explain exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, asking for feedback, collecting feedback, and then maybe I make a decision to adjust. Maybe I make a decision to move forward, but gaining feedback and clarity and not leading with entitlement, that is how you're going to gain success in life and in business.
Welcome to the Fitness CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to helping fitness entrepreneurs launch and grow successful gyms. Here's your host, Bryce Henson.
All right, friends, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Fitness CEO Podcast. And before I get to the content today, I want to give you a friendly reminder to give us a like and subscribe. And if you get value from this episode, please share this with another entrepreneur or someone looking to open a business. That will be very valuable for them and for you as well. So I'm in the studio. We got a solo podcast episode, and I am pumped up today to be able to give you value. And really the framework of today's episode is entitled How to Be a Great Boss. And to take a step back, actually, I'm going to be teaching today from a book, How to Be a Great Boss, and doing a breakdown, if you will, high level. So the value for you is you don't have to actually read this content, assuming that you have the book. You can get a high-level download from me, but more importantly, not only a high-level download with the biggest takeaways, but also some real-life application from my business experience and my journey as a business owner since 2012. So that is the best of both worlds today. So with all that said, taking a step back, the How to Be a Great Boss series is part, or the book, I should say, is part of the EOS series, which stands for Entrepreneur Operating System. And the EOS system is the system that we integrated in the Fit Body Bootcamp franchise, not only from an HQ perspective, but all the way down to our franchise partners, coaches, and clients in their businesses. And it's been an absolute game changer in our business, our execution, our growth, our profitability, and overall our fulfillment and satisfaction for running a business that gets better results for our clients with less stress, which is really the name of the game. So I'm so passionate about the EOS system. Honestly, I would not run a business without EOS, and even more so, the secret sauce, taking another step. We brought on an integrator for EOS to help us integrate EOS throughout the course of our business. His name is Brian Underhill, an absolute awesome dude. He's linked in one of our episodes. So if you want to learn a little bit more about EOS in general, would highly encourage you to check out that episode. But really for the here and now, I want to paint the visibility that I'm going to be teaching an EOS framework, but really specifically on how to be a great boss. So that is what we're going to be up to today. So why be a great boss? Well, at the end of the day, if you're going to be opening a business, you need someone who's going to be able to lead and manage that business. So you need to be a boss in your business. If you are interested in being an entrepreneur and running your business and you don't have interest in being a boss, well, I hate to break it to you, entrepreneurship and business ownership is not for you. And that could be okay. But if you are a hard-driven, person that wants to make a big impact and really make a lot of income in that process and really, have a business that you can run, you can be your own boss, if you will. You need to learn to be a good boss for yourself and ultimately the team that you're going to lead. So that's the context. Now, I want to kind of give you two takeaways and two stories here. When I first started my entrepreneur journey right after college, actually even through college, I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by the famous author Robert Kiyosaki. It was an absolute game changer. It talked to me about finance and accounting and business ownership. And I was about 20 at the time, and I was really fascinated with the book, and he kind of talks a little bit about Robert, his rich dad and his poor dad. His rich dad, ironically, didn't go to high school. I think had a middle school education, not well versed in academia, but was an entrepreneur, ended up building businesses, and became one of the wealthiest people in Hawaii. On the flip side, his quote unquote poor dad was his actually biological dad, and his poor dad, though, if you can believe, was highly educated. I think he had his PhD, was a professor, or at least very highly trained in school, but really really was not financially successful. So you would think that all the academia would be his rich dad. It was actually the opposite was true. So his poor dad, or excuse me, his rich dad, who graduated, didn't even graduate high school, was really the person that he looked up to and learned a lot from a business context. And in the story, he talks about, a story about his rich dad coming in and addressing his board of directors at his quarterly state of the business. And, this guy without a high school degree, basically his CPA, his accountant, his bookkeeper, his attorney are all at his beck and call. And he basically set the scene where he's basically leading and managing a team of people that were really, really smart and intelligent, from an entrepreneurial perspective. And I thought I was really fantasized about that particular moment. I could see myself to some degree in that picture. I really desired that, but I also didn't have the confidence, the know-how to be able to execute that. So it's really cool to kind of see that come full circle 20 years later, and now have gone through, business ownership and entrepreneurship and actually been, in that seat. And that's really what I'm here to teach you today. So that in mind, the next story before I kind of move on to chapter 1 breakdown is just to set the context that you might have interest, and you should have interest if you're watching this podcast, but also know that you probably suck at being a boss, and that's okay, especially if you haven't done this before. I sucked, and honestly, that's the God honest truth. So when I opened my first Fit Body Bootcamp location in Yorba Linda, California in 2012, I was excited. Ultimately, I became a personal trainer. I had an incredible touch with fitness that transformed my life. In 2007, I went from the least performing sales rep in the company, the highest performing sales of the company. But most importantly, aside from losing body fat, gaining muscle, building an incredible physique, I got the confidence, the energy, the enthusiasm, the fulfillment that I was looking for. And that's why I'm so passionate about fitness. When I opened my doors, I thought to myself, and I probably inherently knew to be true that I needed to develop leadership skills and business skills, but I was so passionate and focused about being the best coach ever, which served me well. But then what I realized is as my business started to grow in a handful of months in, and I'm gaining clients, I'm having to bring on team, there was a disconnect. I realized very quickly that my team was not on board. They were not on board with my vision. My communication skills were not strong. My leadership skills were not strong. My management skills were not strong. Quite frankly, I was not a good boss. And really, that's why I'm so passionate today to be able to teach you, because I don't want you to fall in the same trap that I did. But really what I'm trying to say is you should have the desire to be a strong boss. If not, this podcast is not for you. But assuming that you do, then my call to action and really just reassurance, it's okay if you don't have good communication skills, if you don't have good leadership skills, if you don't have, skills that are going to enable you to be a good boss today. But at the end of the day, it's a learned skill. It's an acquired skill. So half the battle is setting the chart at play, basically setting the vision out there. And then from there, you can learn and acquire those skills. And that's why you're watching this podcast episode today. So that all said, that's the overview and really set the tone. I'm going to dive in with the chapter breakdown. So chapter 1, being a great boss. And really the focus is your focus as a leader, as a boss, is creating an environment where your team thrives. And the fact is that people issues are reported higher than other challenges like profits and sales, etc. when you are the boss. When you're the leader of the company, of course, your job is to move the bottom line to basically increase the profitability, but your job as a leader then moves away from basically training clients and running admin and operations into becoming the boss that your team needs. And your people are your competitive advantage and ultimately your company. And I'll probably say this a few times in our episode, your people are your product, your people are your company, your people are your competitive advantage, and you must never lose sight of that, never. And at Fit Body Bootcamp, we have incredibly high standard, world-class locations with 4.0 build out, which is the name of the design. They are beautiful locations. They have, the state-of-the-art facility, absolutely incredible. But at the end of the day, humbling ourselves, if you take the people away, really what you're staring at is 4 walls and a mat. And that's really just, being raw and being real and being authentic with you. The people is what makes this engine happen. We are in the people business first and foremost, and you must never lose sight of that. And that's why it's so important that you develop your leadership, your management, and your boss skills so that way you can lead your organization, because your people are your biggest, asset. So that in mind, because your people are your asset, probably one of the best and single most important decisions is who to hire, not only from your team, but specifically in a leadership role. And I want to basically give you a little breakdown right here. And that is so, so important. The trajectory that we're on right now at Fit Body Bootcamp, we are just a missile freaking rocking or launching off, rocking and rolling into the hemisphere. We have so much momentum on our side. And really, if you break it down, yes, it's the systems, the operations, the POS or the SOPs, all the systems or the standard operating operating procedures, all that to be true. But the reality of the situation is because of our people. And it starts with me as a CEO and also ripples down from our leadership team all the way throughout our entire organization, to our entire HQ team here, to our franchise partners, to their teams, their coaches, and ultimately their clients. So when you're hiring and you're looking for people, your biggest asset. And for your leadership perspective, that is so important. Every single hire is so important. And for us, I'm going to give you a breakdown and how we are able to recruit these people. And really, we recruited them within. We didn't make a shotgun decision. They were not sight unseen. They were basically nurtured, and the relationships were built. And over time, they developed to be incredible leaders. And that starts with me. Ultimately, Bedros Keuilian, the co-host of this show, but ultimately the founder of Fit Body Bootcamp, he saw something in me. Good on him for seeing that. I joined the brand as a franchise partner, as an owner in 2012. I was a personal trainer, then an owner, a coach, a multi-location owner. Then I became the VP, and then ultimately I became the CEO of the business. And B did not make a shotgun decision on me. He ultimately knew me for 10 years, or 9 years, I should say, before he awarded me the CEO position, and 6 years before he awarded me the VP position. So this was not, a shot in the dark. This was a well-vetted decision. And that's the same with Brittany, who's our integrator, using EOS terminology. And really, while my position as CEO, I'm the visionary of the brand, I oversee the brand, Brittany is our integrator. She runs the day-to-day teamwork, and all of our leaders actually report to Brittany. And she's also her organizational title is the Executive Director of Operations. And she joined our brand in 2016, I believe, right around there. And she started in sales, then she joined the operations team, then the compliance team, then worked her up as a mid-level manager, and then became, overseeing the operations department, and then got promoted into the integrator role. So as you can see from that perspective, it wasn't like, hey, Brittany, nice to know you. We're going to add you to the leadership team. This is a big deal, running up franchise, but ultimately it's your location as well. Every hire you make, and ultimately every hire on the leadership team, needs to be well thought out and vetted. Same with Jessica. Jessica Pearsall is our director of finance, or executive director of finance and HR. This was not a shotgun decision. We brought her on board. She joined the company in 2016. She had developed a personal relationship with Bedros, our founder, and his wife Di, through their kids' coaching. And she got brought on board as an admin, then a personal assistant, and then she did some operational work at some of our different sister companies. And then an opportunity came where there's a finance position, an HR position available. And then after that, she got elevated to the leadership role. So as you can see, we're shooting this in 2023 right now. It was not a shotgun decision. It was a well thought out plan. And that is the message for you. All hires for sure, but especially your leadership team needs to be really well thought out. The last two hires that I want to be able to provide you visibility on, I'm my brother Barrett. He's the executive director of coaching and profitability. And in 2014, he became a franchise partner. Then he became a multi-location owner. Then he joined our coaching and profitability team. Then he started training our elite trainings. Then he got promoted to the director of coaching and profitability and joined our leadership team. So it's an evolution. He's a trusted commodity. It was not, a shot in the dark that, hey, our executive director of coaching and profitability, who is basically providing coaching to our entire brand, we're making a shotgun decision. That is just not the case. Vetted out for a long period of time. Of course, my relationship certainly, helped with that, but ultimately well thought out decision, and our company is way better for it. And lastly, Joel Kokis, who is our executive director of marketing, and he is a multi-location owner in Canada, joined our brand somewhere around 2014, 2015 with his brother Jared, launched one location, launched a few more. He was a geophysicist to start, so very smart, detail-oriented, analytical marketing mind. And then, opened one location, opened multiple locations, got a position supporting marketing, and then eventually became the executive director of marketing. So I gave you 4 specific examples from the leadership team that I lead here at Fit Body Bootcamp that are leading our brand, because our team is our product, and these people are instrumental in the success. And even our media team right here, Pablo and Haley and Helen, who are all behind the scenes right now, they're all supporting the vision, and also too led by our leadership team. So all this to say is you need to make smart choices. There's a famous adage, hire slow and fire fast. And there's a lot of truth to that. So it's really, really important to showcase that value and really taking a step-ladder approach and a long-term approach in terms of working with people. So that's going to conclude, I guess, the first chapter of really the value of people in your organization. I'm going to move on to chapter 2, which is really the breakdown of, do you have what it takes to be a great boss? And I love this particular book because they start out every single chapter with a little quote. So this quote is by George Carlin. Most people work hard enough just not to get fired and get paid enough money, just not enough. Whoa, I just really butchered that. Let me hit that one more time by George Carlin. Here we go. Most people work hard enough just not to get fired and get paid just enough money not to quit. So there we go. I delivered it cleanly. And I think there's unfortunately a lot of truth to that. So taking a step back, good bosses take responsibility of their people. Leadership, being an awesome boss, is about responsibility. They develop their people skills and they earn the respect by service, never by entitlement. And I'm going to hit this really hard. Now, I am the CEO of the brand. My team will tell you not once and never will I ever lead with my title. The fact that I'm the CEO of the brand makes freaking no difference, okay, to my team. Yes, they respect that from a hierarchy perspective, but at the end of the day, you put your CEO title to the ground and you work with people on an individual base. You connect with them. You build relationships with them. That's how you lead people. That's how I lead people with success, and that's really my message for you. Now, that said, humbling myself, it wasn't always this way. And I think, when I started my first business, having the ego, which many young entrepreneurs do, I'm going to basically just give you a very vulnerable story, which is a hard learning lesson about leadership and about, leading without entitlement. And at the time, I led with entitlement. Not all the times, but certainly it reared its ugly head on occasion. And I'll never forget, it was the first year running a business, and we started growing, and we started, having other clients, and I brought on a team, and I had a few coaches at the time. And I decided, with some renovations, that I was going to change my office room for the equipment room. I was actually going to swap them. So the equipment room became the office, and the office became the equipment room. And I did it over the weekend, and I didn't want to basically burden my team there. So decided to basically just switch out the offices. I thought, I wanted a better office space. I thought that was going to be a better fit. And I executed that. And then I come in on Monday, and as it turns out, one of my coaches took issue with the change. And my coach was complaining and came up to me and was like, "Hey, who changed this? Why'd they change this?" Kind of got all bent out of shape. Well, I, calmly mentioned that I changed it. And if you can believe, she was still upset. And I thought to myself, at this point, my ego starts to flare. I'm thinking how dare you? Who is the CEO? Who is the boss? Because at the end of the day, from a hierarchy perspective, from an authority perspective, yes, I had the authority to make that decision. Yes, at the end of the day, I was the CEO, I was the owner, I was the boss. However, when leading people, strong communication skills is needed. At the end of the day, it's important to communicate the plan of attack, communicate your vision, communicate changes that are going to take place, give your team ample time and notice, ask if they have the objections. You still might move forward anyway, but ultimately getting their feedback and hearing them out, that is the approach that you need to take. So I took a little bit of a humble pie. When I look back at that experience, I still cringe. Now, if there's any changes in place, if the director were moving that directive, that's fine. We might move in that directive. I'm going to provide ample communication. I'm going to explain exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, asking for feedback, collecting feedback, and then maybe I make a decision to adjust. Maybe I make a decision to move forward, but gaining feedback and clarity and not leading with entitlement, that is how you're going to gain success in life and in business. So that is a little bit of a war story there. Now, transitioning to more of the nuts and bolts of having what you take. And there's a terminology that we use in EOS and now within Fit Body Bootcamp that's ingrained in our culture because of the EOS system, which is GWC. Get it, want it, have the capacity for it. And really, for every single employee, you have to look at this lens. Does the employee get it? Do they want it? And do they have the capacity for it? And even in our EOS quarterly meetings that we do on a quarterly basis, which I'm going to jump into at a later date in terms of this particular podcast episode, Brian Underhill, our EOS implementer, basically fires, quote unquote, fires on paper all of our leadership team, all of our team in general, and then basically takes a look at the accountability chart, checks, is this the right accountability chart that's going to take us to the next level over the next 90 days? Okay, great. Check. The accountability chart is in check. And it's a great revision and audit on a 90-day basis, which is actually very, very cleansing and healthy for any organization. But after we check and make sure that the accountability chart is good to go, the next action step is replacing the people back into those accountability charts. But we're doing a check. Does this person get the role? Okay. Do they want it? And do they have the capacity for it? So if either of those are no, then we move on with the exception of capacity. And there's a few different ways that you could overcome capacity. But from a get it perspective, you must ask yourself, do you honestly grasp the job? Do you have the aptitude? Do you have the intuitiveness for it? Now, giving you full visibility or giving you a story, a week ago, I just went out to Arizona on a day trip over the weekend to meet with our fellow technology partner, who's a dear friend. His wife is a Fit Body Bootcamp owner. His name's Antonio. Awesome dude, and has built a custom CRM and POS system for Fit Body Bootcamp called Fit Pro Tracker. So it's been an incredible ride to kind of build this and service Fit Body Bootcamp. Now, if I decided to be the CEO of Fit Pro Tracker and take Antonio's role, that would be a massive mistake. And the reason that is, from a get it perspective, I don't get it. I do not know how to build software. I do not know how to program code. So at the end of the day, while I might be a good leader, a good boss in general, to be the CEO of a technology-based company, I don't get it, okay? So I do not qualify for that. So if you're looking for me and humbling myself through the lens of a GWC filter, I don't get it in that particular capacity. Now, the good news is for Fit Body Bootcamp, I certainly get it. I certainly want to have the capacity, and that's good for you. That's good for our franchise partners. That's good for our team and our entire organization. But every single situation, every teammate, every role is different. So the next piece is, do you want it? Do the challenges in the role give you energy on a daily basis? That's important. Do you have the fire in your belly? Do you have what it takes to complete the project? Because at the end of the day, it's about wanting. It's about hunger more than anything. And I just connected with my awesome assistant and copywriter and social media extraordinaire, Helen, who's been with our company actually for a year. Today is her 1-year anniversary. So Helen, shout out to you. And last year when we were going through the interview process, we talked about her role, and she had some institutional knowledge in terms of copywriting, but she didn't have any event planning experience or social media experience, which is okay. We're basically discussing the role, but the biggest call to action, I was like, Helen, at the end of the day, you can learn these skills, but the one thing I cannot teach you is, do you want it? Are you hungry for it? So my question to you is, out of all the other applicants, okay, looking for this position, do you want it? Are you hungry? And I'll never forget her response to me. She stopped and she said, Bryce, I am not hungry. I am starving. And that was honestly the moment in time where I was like, we need to sign her up for Fit Body Bootcamp. We're going to bring her on. And it's been an incredible ride, because not only has she been hungry, she's been starving for the position. And that's really what it takes to be successful. So that want it component in the GWC. And then lastly, the capacity for it. So sometimes, really, and we're going to talk about the 4 capacity issues, sometimes capacity issues can be overcome, sometimes not. But really, when we talk about the capacity, we're talking about 4 things. Does a person have the emotional capacity? Is their heart, in it? Do they have empathy? Are they confident from a humble perspective? Okay. Do they have the emotional capacity? Number 2, do they have the intellectual capacity? Do they have the brains? Do they have the thinking ability for that particular role? Again, going back, humbling myself to another role. I'm a data-driven guy, but I'm not a very analytical guy in terms of looking at the data. I rely on other awesome leaders to bridge that gap for me. So from an intellectual perspective, if there's a position in our organization that's really heavy on data, guess what? That is not me, because I do not have the capacity for it. So I'm giving you an example here. You have to have the capacity for it from an emotional perspective, from an intellectual perspective is number 2. Number 3 is the physical perspective. Do you have the endurance, stamina? Can you get your hands dirty? And can your body take, the basically role? And this is why I'm so passionate here at Fit Body Bootcamp, because the fact of the matter is nearly 50% of our population is statistically obese, which is a huge issue. Number 1, from a physical perspective, all the complications that come of it, 80% of the people who are severely impacted from COVID were statistically obese. And that's not a surprise, because whether it's COVID or any virus coming to your body, when your body is obese and your body has to work hard, just your organs in general, just to keep your body moving, that's going to tax your body. But more importantly, from a mental health perspective, the stats are always so high that people with obesity have massive depression, and that's not good either. So from a physical capacity, the person has to have the physical capacity of the role. And I went off on a tangent there just to kind of show the value of what we do, because we give people the physical capacity on a day-to-day basis, and that's why I'm so fired up, and you should be too. Lastly, time. Okay, do they have the time capacity? Are you self-disciplined? Do you have avoid the tyranny of urgency? Okay, if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So you have to be able to prioritize yourself from a time perspective. And those are the 4 aspects of the capacity perspective. So does the person get it? Do they want it? They have the capacity for it? This is the lens that you need to look for every person that you're potentially hiring towards your team. And that's really important to know. So this all said, if you don't have these, it's okay. Go find your unique ability. Not everyone has to be a great boss, and that's the great thing. So giving you an example, that dichotomy, okay, of my wife, Tatiana, and then versus me, okay, we have very different skill sets and interests. We have the same values, but our personalities could not be more different. She is so on point when it comes to detail-orientedness, data-driven, operationally focused. Like nothing gets past her from a data perspective. She is a freaking hawk and has increased the profitability of our business exponentially. She is so valuable. This in mind, she has no interest at all leading people and being a boss. So at the end of the day, while she's an incredible operations person, our business is so much profitable and better off for her. If it was up for her to be the boss, it would not be a good situation because she does not have the desire, and that is completely okay. The opposite is true with me. I love people. I love working with people. I love leading people. I just love people, and that really qualifies me to be a good boss in many different ways. But if you were to look at me from an operations perspective, from a data entry perspective, from an analytical perspective, that is not my zone of genius. So for me, that would not be a good fit. So really, to put a bow on this particular chapter, it's okay if you don't want to be a good boss, but honestly, entrepreneurship and business ownership is not for you. If it is, and you do want to be a business owner, if you want to make a massive impact, if you want to live on your terms and have the autonomy to do so, then now is the time to warm yourself up to the idea of becoming an awesome boss. And the good news is you don't have to be an awesome boss today. You just have to make the commitment to actually becoming, learning, doing the work, developing yourself, just like I did, starting off as a horrible boss and then gravitating and can still being a work in progress, but really developing into really strong leadership management and boss type skills. So that is the breakdown of chapter number 2, which is really, do you have what it takes?
What's up, my friend? Bryce here. Now, you might know me as the co-host of this podcast and the CEO of FitBody. But what many people don't know is that I actually began my journey as a FitBody franchise owner. Now, being an owner, I wake up every day absolutely doing what I love. I live my passion. I help people transform their lives and have both financial and personal freedom. And it's for these reasons and many more that other owners join the brand and open their own FitBody locations too. So if you're looking to build a highly profitable business, take charge of your life, and create an impact in your very own community, then opening a FitBody gym might be a perfect fit for you. Now, to see if a territory is available in your area, as we have very limited spots due to our incredible growth, go ahead and visit our website at fbbcfranchise.com to complete an application. Well, thanks, and back to the show.
Moving on to the third chapter, and really actually taking a step back, this particular book, and I don't know if I hit this in the beginning of the episode, is a 10-chapter book. And because of the density, and also too, I'm being able to provide you, touch points. I'm not just going specifically off the book. We're actually breaking this up into 2 parts. So this is part 1. I'm going to cover the first 5 chapters. So we're over halfway done, or nearly halfway done with this particular part. And then we're going to shoot basically another episode, part 2, which is going to release in 3 weeks' time to finish off the last chapters. Chapter 3 is about delegating and elevating. So Dale Carnegie, the infamous Dale Carnegie, has this quote: "The average person puts in 25% of their energy into their work. The world takes the average person," I have a hard time reading. I can riff, I can dialogue, but reading is a struggle for me today. So I'm going to back to this quote one more time. So by Dale Carnegie: "The average person puts in 25% of the energy into their work. The world takes its hat off to those who devote 50% energy, and the world stands on its head for those very few souls who give everything." And my friends, I give everything, and I want you to give everything too. That's what I want your legacy to be, because it's certainly going to be my legacy as well, because that's just, cut from that same cloth. I want to make a massive impact, and I want to do that in a very positive way, which is really what I'm pouring into you today. Taking a step back before I go into delegating and elevating, which is so important. It's an EOS terminology, but really delegation is a leadership and a management terminology. And this is really hard for entrepreneurs, especially people who are perfectionists and type A that want control of everything. And it was really, really hard for me. I'm so embarrassed to tell you this story. But back in 2012, when we first got our business off the ground, I was just telling you the story about my wife. When we just basically launched our business and enrolled or signed up and registered for our CRM and our POS system to run, our clients and the payment processing. If you can believe, I was such a control freak. I was so freaking scared of delegating anything. I would not even delegate the password login for our CRM system to my wife, Tatiana, who now is was like built out the whole damn thing, which is mind blowing to me at the time. But I think it was just like insecurity and wanting that control and just like, not having, maturity and really strong leadership and development skills. Now I laugh because she's built out the system. She's the reason for the success at our location from a technology and operations perspective. Now, fast forward, I was like so afraid to basically let go of the vine, if you will. Fast forward to, 2023. I don't think I've actually looked at my CRM of my business in probably the last 18 months. And that's a good thing. And that's not to put down my team or just to elevate me. That's really just to say my job is to lead, manage, and sell. And that's my focus as a good boss, which is what your focus is going to be as well. So at the end of the day, you have to delegate in order to make this engine work. So breaking this down, there is 5 steps to delegations. We're going to go through those right now. Step number 1, list all the business-related activities in a journal for all your weekly tasks. Be patient, be detailed. Even if you're not detailed like me, take a deep breath and go through the list because it's really important that you're inclusive. Step number 2, add overlooked activities. Okay, so you might not want to do this in one fell swoop. You might want to do this over a week basis so you can continue to add and brainstorm all the things that you execute on a daily activity basis, including your overlooked activities. Step number 3, when you have a completed list, put the list in 4 different quadrants. Quadrant number 1, love, something you love and you're great at. Quadrant number 2, something that you like and you're good at. Quadrant number 3, something you don't like but you're good at. And quadrant number 4, something you don't like and you're also not good at. Okay, so that's step number 3. Step number 4, in the step number 3, which we just went over, list all the activities into each of the 4 quadrants, which I'll explain here in a second. And then step number 5, if you cannot if you cannot accomplish everything, then you have a time capacity problem and you need to delegate. And I want to actually take a TV timeout here for a second and really showcase the value. This is not just a one and done exercise. I'm going to give you a very embarrassing story. While I consider myself a great delegator, even a year ago, I just had this like biggest brain fart ever about the simplest task that I didn't delegate. But really my call to action for you to do is you need to be doing this on a quarterly basis. EOS breaks up the year into quarterly 90-day chunks. And the best way to describe this, there's an old adage that says, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer, one bite at a time. So the same true is, how do you run a business with strong execution? 1 quarter or 1 90-day interval at a time. So every 90 days, you need to be reassessing this because things change, priorities change. You'll have more tasks that need to be added, but also more tasks that need to be delegated as well. The story I want to tell you is while I gave you the really embarrassing humility-based story back in 2012 when I got our CRM and POS system off the ground, which I was so hesitant to even give the login credentials to Tatiana. Fast forward, I'm a delegating machine. But I went to a personal branding workshop and I was learning about marketing and strategies and creating content like I'm doing today. And I create all, content with the help of my media team, with the help of Pablo and Haley, who are in the studio, and Helen in the studio today. So I help create all this content, but I write the copy for it. But up until 2022, I was actually taking that content and physically I was the one publishing that to my account, which is nothing wrong with that. It's an important task that needs to happen, but it doesn't need to happen by me. And that is the call to action of you as your boss, as a leader. Not everything has to happen by you. It needs to happen in your organization, but not by you. So I had this big aha that I just need to basically create the content from a copy perspective, aggregate the media or the video, and then from there, send the content to my assistant, Emma is her name, Emma Maria. And then Emma Maria takes that content, she publishes it on Instagram, she publishes on Facebook, she publishes on LinkedIn. So she's actually the one actually doing the publishing. Very important task. Thank you so much, Emma. If you're watching, I appreciate you. But it's a task that does not need to be done by me. So I want to give you another example. Even with an experienced delegator, there's also times that things are missed. So it's very important on a quarterly basis you execute this. That all said, we talked about the 4 quadrants we're going to get to now. I'm going to get to those right now. So the 4 quadrants are quadrant number 1, does these tasks give you energy and you love them? Quadrant number 2, you can do with minimal effort. Quadrant number 3, does not give you joy, but you're actually good at. In quadrant number 4, not in your zone of genius and stay away from the avoid like the plague. And that was a little bit of an ad lib for me. That's not in the US book. But those are the 4 quadrants in terms of the breakdown. Now, giving you some insight, my zone of genius, as I talked about, is leading, is inspiring, is communication, is casting the vision. It's working with people. I love me some people. That is my zone of genius, and that's what fills my cup. What is not my zone of genius is anything attention to detail focused, anything analytical, anything data oriented, anything specifically that requires a lot of patience and attention. That is not me. Also, I think this does a great job and really some additional coaching and value to you. We shot an episode, I believe it's episode 92, which we do the disc profile breakdown, which we link up with a training company called Take Flight Learning, which is really taking the disc profile and integrated and using metaphors for birds, eagle, parrot, dove, owl. Highly encourage you to watch the episode, which was really not a surprise. And the reason I'm sharing with you, because I'm a high eagle and I'm a secondary high parrot, okay? So typically, high eagle, high parrot like to lead, like to inspire, like to communicate, like to work with people, like to have strong vision. So actually, that's kind of factory installed in my personality. So my call to action for you is like, what are you naturally good at? Gravitate to that. On the flip side of the coin, and I showcased a little bit about Tatiana, my wife, she is the exact opposite personality style for me. She's a high dove, high owl. And owls are good at reading data. They're very strong attention to detail, and they're good at looking at analytical information. So no secret there. It makes a lot of sense from a personality perspective. Those are just naturally things ingrained in her and my personality. So highly encourage you to check out that episode, because your personality is going to dictate a lot of things that you naturally are, gravitate to in the tasks that you would excel at or you don't excel at. To kind of finish out the latter parts of this chapter, I want to take a second to reiterate the point, and I touched on this earlier, but great bosses are not born, they are developed. Yes, you have to have the raw ingredients. Yes, you have to like working with people. Yes, you have to be attracted to business ownership and leadership and working with people and being your own boss and being your own entrepreneur. You have to have that in order to be a good boss. But at the end of the day, you don't have to have natural boss skills factory installed. In fact, most people don't. I certainly didn't as well. They are developed. So you just have to have the raw passion, if you will. And if you have the passion, you can learn the talent. And that's what's really what today's about. Additionally, and I never thought of this as a young leader, but I definitely know this to be true now. It's a little bit counterintuitive, but by delegating, you make your team win, you give them more responsibility, you give them more purpose, you will stop being the bottleneck, you'll make yourself and your team way more valuable. And there's a famous saying in business, you only get paid for done. And if you are the bottleneck in your business, which many times as a business entrepreneur, I've been in the bottleneck in my business, our franchise partners have been the bottleneck of the business, you probably have been the bottleneck of your business as well, even if you're not the entrepreneur and business owner, but especially if you are. At the end of the day, you need to remove yourself as the bottleneck, and you actually need to empower your people. And what I've learned is it's not a chore. It's not laborious for you to basically be able to delegate information and delegate, tasks for you to do. Many times your team wants to support you. Your team wants to be fulfilled. Your team wants to take ownership. So give them ownership. Stop messing around. Literally do right by your people. Open up the delegate and elevate mentality in your mind so that way you can get more things done. You can accomplish more things. And guess what? Everyone loves being on a winning team. I just watched The Last Dance by Michael Jordan, or The Last Dance, which is coverage of the Bulls and the great Michael Jordan. And Michael Jordan was a hard teammate. He was a hard leader to work for. He had a high level of expectation. The guy won 6 world championships, rightfully so. His expectation was really hard. So many times he was challenging to work with, but you know what? Watching the interview for all his players that played with him, from Tony Kukoc to Scottie Pippen to Steve Kerr, and the list goes on, they're like, you know what? He was hard many times, but I love working with him because I love winning, and this guy wins. So at the end of the day, when you delegate, you can actually elevate yourself in the organization and increase the probability that you are going to win, which is the name of the game. And guess what? Your team wants to win. So this all said, here are the most common reasons young leaders, young bosses, young entrepreneurs do not delegate, okay? Here we go. I'm going to list you the list by EOS, but I'm also going to give you a couple that I've been guilty of as well. Number 1, being good at these activities, it's what got me promoted. Number 2, I have no one to delegate to. Number 3, too much time will be required to train the new person. Number 4, it's faster if I do it myself. I'm going to take a TV timeout. It might be faster in the moment, but long term, it will not be faster. So I want you to break that freaking belief. I've been guilty of it before. I've been guilty of like, oh shoot, what's the rub? It's probably easier for me to just do it now instead of training this other person. And that might be a good short-term position, but that is not a good long-term. And my friend, if you're watching this podcast, you want to be a business owner, you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to have autonomy, you want to do awesome things. At the end of the day, you need to learn how to delegate, and you might be better at it than your team to start, but you need to basically replicate yourself, train them, and get it off your plate so that way you can delegate and elevate yourself. The last, I think, the last batch, if you will, number 5, I wouldn't ask anyone to do something that I'm not willing to do. That's great from a leadership mindset perspective, but that's horrible perspective from a delegation perspective. Number 6, no one can do it better than me. Number 7, too complicated to explain. And number 8, I spend too much time fixing mistakes. And I think I was guilty of that. Like, no one can do it better than me when I was reluctant to give my freaking wife the passcode, the username to my CRM and billing system. At the end of the day, I was wrong. She does it way better than me. And I think that's just the ego at play. So take a piece of humble pie, the piece of pie that I gave myself. Stop freaking being egocentric. Take a bit of humble pie, and you're going to be well on your way to success, and your team's going to be more happy for it. Chapter number 4, surrounding yourself with the great people. We got 2 chapters left. I'm going to bring the fire. And this is so important because your people are your product. Your people are everything, especially in the fitness business space and the service business space. So I'm going to kick it off with a quote by Roosevelt. The best executive is the one who has enough sense to pick good people to do what needs to be done, but enough restraint to not to meddle with them while they're doing it. Now, at first glance, this might be tough, but you will learn this. Okay, you will learn this. At the end of the day, it's important not to micromanage your people. However, the big caveat, at the beginning, in the onboarding stage, it's okay to micromanage. In fact, you should micromanage, but you should actually set the expectation with your new person that, hey, to start off, you don't know, you don't have a lot of institutional knowledge about what we do here, but that's okay. I'm going to teach you, I'm going to train you, I'm going to coach you. And for the first 90 days, you might feel that you might be feeling that you are being micromanaged a bit. That's the truth of the matter. And that's okay. That's not going to be forever, because what's going to happen is you're going to learn, you're going to grow, you're going to accept feedback, you're going to pivot, you're going to adjust. And at the 90-day mark, at the 120-day mark, and by 6 months, you're going to be cranking away where basically I'm going to be able to kind of take a step back and just watch you flourish. And that is the vision that you want for your teammate. But know that it's okay to micromanage, but not for the long term. You need to trust and you surround yourself with awesome people. And just going back to the point that I mentioned earlier, we have an amazing brand at Fit Body Bootcamp. We have beautiful, world-class, state-of-the-art facilities, but just humbling ourselves, taking a piece of that humble pie, which I just encouraged you in a second ago. At the end of the day, we have 4 walls and mats. Your people make the process and the magic happen. So as a boss, you have responsibility and a privilege to pick who you want in your team. Great bosses take the time to evaluate your team. And I'm going to actually take a TV timeout and actually give you some insight and the value of a franchise system, the value of Fit Body Bootcamp, and the value that we provide our franchise partners with the new coaches onboarding playbook, but also the mock interview process. So we actually created a 10-point process from a mock interview perspective, which we didn't originally have, but over about 5 years ago, we started to develop, really strong onboarding process to help our people. And really, training is everything. But it starts actually with the interview process. Before it was like, hey, have one conversation. You sound good. Let's go. Okay, now I'm being sarcastic a bit. But ultimately, that was not the right approach. However, now we've actually taken the time to actually create a 10-point checklist process where the new candidate, when they're interviewing the process, they do Zoom, they meet the team, they get a workout in, then basically they get access to the workout that they're actually going to coach in a mock session, okay, which only them and our coaches are there, and we get them on the mic and we basically have them coach this mini session, this like 10-minute mini session, and we're not looking to make sure that they're the best fire-breathing dragon coach of all time from the very beginning. In fact, they're probably going to suck, but what we want to know, did they research? Did they prepare? Did they actually take it seriously? Did they take feedback? Because there's a 10-minute circuit, we give them feedback, and then we give the opportunity to do another 10-minute circuit again. So it's a 20-minute process, but we do a 5-minute feedback sharing session. Does that person accept and take feedback well? That's really, really important. So this is all part of the 10-point checklist in our mock interview process, which is mission critical if you're trying to recruit and also develop the best people. So really, really important that you develop that something if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, but ultimately that's the value of lashing yourself with a franchise system like Fit Body Bootcamp. That all said, when you hire the right person, one good person or one great person can equal 3 good people. I'm going to say that again. One great person can equal 3 good people. And it's okay to pay above average. And that's actually a strong recommendation because your retention is everything. You treat your people, give them love, give them, support, both from a financial perspective, but it's also not all about financial. It's about opportunity perspective. Are you training your team? Are you developing your team? So important. When you do, you can actually get twice the productivity with really half the labor cost compared to other organizations. And really what that comes down to, that's good for you as a company, that is good for you as a team, and that is most importantly good for your clients. And we talk about the value of retaining your clients, but if you really want to retain your clients in the fitness business, guess what? You got to retain your team. And I'm going to actually take a quick second to do a shameless plug of my locations, but this is something I pride myself in, and this is why our locations in general, but specifically my location in Mission Vale, has been so successful over the years. When I look at my team, my current team right now, and everything is subject to change. Change is the only constant in life, but I have my head coach, Jake, and then my mother, Donna, who does our customer service. They've been with us since 2015. Okay. Emma Maria, my executive assistant I just talked to you about, she's been on board since 2017. John, our client coordinator, and Blake, our integrator, have been on board since 2019. For the average fitness coach, stays on board for 6 months, in the industry for 6 months. So we're just talking about years here. You think about it from a retention play, there's so much time, energy, preparation that you need to put in the onboarding process. It's really, really painful to have a high level of turnover. And guess what? Your clients don't like that either because we're in the relationship business. So invest in your team. Do the diligence to make sure that you're putting the proper onboarding systems and recruiting and vetting systems in place, because that's going to pay dividends over the long term. And I'm a walking, talking, living, breathing example of that. The last thing I want to hit on in this particular section about surrounding yourself with great people is about core values. And core values are foundational to your success. They drive culture, okay? They also attract people who you want in your organization that are similar to you, that value the same things. They also repel the people who don't. They also endure through moments of truth. They are actually the soul of your organization. Core values are the foundation of your organization. Now, giving you insight, attaching ourselves to the EOS framework, core values are actually tied to the leadership team. They are not tied to the company, which means every 90 days they are subject to change depending on your leadership. Do you have a change in guard? Did you have turnover in your leadership? Do you have a new person on your leadership? So for us, very vulnerably learning this process, we established awesome, rock solid core values years ago at Fit Body Bootcamp. But we're currently going through an exercise right now with our leadership team through the guidance and mentorship of Brian Underhill, who is our implementer, to basically redefine our core values because our leadership team has changed. Our founder, Bedros, and his wife Di, they were on the leadership team a few years ago, but they've actually delegated and elevated themselves out of the business. I've been on the leadership team for years now. Jessica has as well, but Barrett, my executive director of coaching and profitability, my brother I just referred to, Joel Kokos, executive director of marketing, and then Brittany, executive director of operations and integrator. They're all new additions in the last few years. So it's time now to redefine our core values based on the leadership team, and that's really, really important. So I want to be able to provide visibility there, and something that we're going to actually announce to our brand at our upcoming World Conference, which we're really excited about. So that all said, while I showed the value of core values, I want to finish this particular chapter with the 4-step method on defining your core values. And this is so important because it's not something where you sit in a room with your leadership team and say, hey, integrity sounds good, we're going to make that as a core value. No, that's actually not the way you go about it. There's actually a process to do that, which actually uncovers your true values as people, which then can be integrated in the organization. So the 4 steps are this. Number 1, think of 3 people who you admire and want to clone. Write those names down. So for me, the one that comes to mind is Elon Musk. And Elon Musk is very controversial. I don't know why that's the case, but at the end of the day, this guy has built SpaceX. He's doing incredible things for humanity, incredible things for electric energy, or solar, I guess I should say, and basically getting us off the carbon footprint, which is incredible. He's a world-class entrepreneur. He's so driven as the day is long. I love him so much. And ultimately, I just want to give you one example. Number 2, think about the qualities, characteristics of people. What makes them who you are, and the things you cannot take. Okay, so that's step number 2. Step number 3, write all the characteristics we just talked about on a piece of paper and then choose 3 to 7. Number 4, write each of them in short phrases and then they should be intuitive. So that's a very dubbed down, kind of process, if you will. Our integrator actually goes through a 60-minute process. And of course, we're aggregating feedback, we're discussing and talking. But we follow that foundation, the 4-step process, and we're able to develop incredible core values. And we're actually in the middle of that process right now. Our integrator is actually writing those descriptions. We're going to realign over the next 30 days and basically pen those new core values and then announce it to our team and ultimately share the vision with our franchise, which is really exciting. So that all said, your biggest focus to put a bow on this particular section of surrounding yourself with the right people should be your focus completely should be surround yourself with the best teammates, not underperformers. Take the time and invest it in recruiting, in hiring, in vetting to make sure that they are rock stars, because guess what? Your people are your only competitive advantage, and that is so true. So this all said, my friends, as we transition, I'm going to basically lead with fire my last particular chapter at the breakdown, and then give you some anecdotal examples before we break today. And my quote of the day, or I guess starting with this book or this particular chapter, is unknown, but it goes like this, if I can read this one correctly. We struggle with the complexities and ignore the simplicity. So really simply put, we're going to talk about LMA, which stands for leadership, management, and accountability. So my question to you is, what's going to set you apart from the pack as an organization and as a boss? Well, guess what? A great boss creates a work environment where people are highly engaged, they're highly accountable, they have strong culture, strong enthusiasm, and just good vibes all around. And that's your job as the boss. You create the culture. The 4 truths about working with being a boss in terms of leading, managing, and holding people accountable. Number 1, being a great boss can be simple, okay? It's simple. It's not easy. There's some basic frameworks that you need to follow, which we're teaching in this episode and more. Number 2, your style does not have to change. My style is one way. Bedros has a completely different style. Brittany, who's another awesome leader, has a completely different style, and that's okay. You be you. I was talking to my buddy Pablo about, this particular episode about, which I'm going to shoot an episode about, attracting your dream client and speaking truth and connecting with your avatar. And I actually, kind of in the process of speaking to a few different people, but at the end of the day, really getting very clear on the message they want to provide my audience, and then being true to me, being authentic to Bryce. That's important, because you can sense if I'm not being authentic. You can sense if I am, and that's important. So you need to be you, just like I need to be me. That authenticity is really important, and you can take that with you in your leadership style, which is really important. Number 3, you must genuinely care. You cannot fake it. Just like parenting, you have to care about your children, just like you have to care about your team. And for me, I feel like I'm so blessed. I'm factory installed with this. I also learned a lot from my mother about learning or about loving and caring on people. I genuinely care about people. So for me, that's probably why I'm most attracted to leading, managing, and holding people accountable. And I don't love holding people accountable. It's needed, actually, as I say this out loud. But the fact of the matter is I love leadership because I love people. So that's factory installed, and I genuinely care. And then lastly, you must want to be great. You can't half-ass this. You got to want to be great in order to be a great boss. To put a bow on this particular chapter, which is a quick chapter, to really define LMA. L stands for leadership, and really leadership is about having vision. It's about working on your business, not in the business. It's about creating change, creating direction, and then giving your space giving your team, I should say, the space to execute. That is what leadership's about, and that's actually my zone of genius. I like to set the course, cast the vision, empower my people, change things as needed, or adjust directions, but basically plan the agenda and chart that course. That's what I love to do. It's hard to do because you need to get buy-in from people, okay? We're not robots. You got to get people persuaded and on board to that vision. So there's challenges in that, but I love that. The second letter in the LMA is management, which is traction. So differently than leadership, where leadership is casting a vision, changing courses, and getting people to follow, management is about having established process. So once the leader establishes the process, it's about working in the business. It's about communicating. It's about being in the weeds and about managing that process. That's what about management is. It's you have a confined process or system, and you need to make sure that your team is held accountable to that system or process. So different skills, but you need both. But to put a bow on this particular chapter in this episode, if you will, vision without traction is frustrating. And that's really the vision is the leadership and the traction is the management. And without them both, you're frustrated, and that is what we want to avoid, and that's why you're listening to this episode today. So my friends, this is the end of part 1. We're going to come in 3 weeks' time to basically conclude with part 2, to basically drop the last piece of knowledge bombs to make you a better leader and make you a better boss. If you got value and you know someone that would gain value from this episode, I'm going to highly encourage you to share this episode, give us a like, give us a subscribe. That way you can keep producing this content for you for free. And then again, we're going to be going back in the studio, releasing episode or part 2 of this series in 3 weeks' time. So I want you to stay tuned for that. So that's all I have for you today. Love you guys. Appreciate you. And we'll see you in the next episode.